for us sinners, now and at the hour of our death. Amen. In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. Amen. Guys, I just wanted to, I'll hand these out. So Tracy Iceberg did have a chance to watch the first video. She won't be here again this week. And also Whitney and Lori watched, and both of them provide a little bit of commentary. So I only had a chance to print out Lori and Whitney's contributions to what we had talked about last week. Maybe you pass one. There you go. Why don't you go ahead and just take some time to read. You guys want to make any comments or?
Excellent.
Yeah,
And then after the meeting last week, I went upstairs, so they would go upstairs and just, when you're up there, it's even smaller. When you look at the sanctuary part, it's even smaller. But here, what she said about the two block pillars flanking, and in the picture, and I know it was just kind of a picture of putting all that color on there. I thought too, we could, like they're saying here, use those to, not blend in, but to use as some sort of expression, the vertical.
yeah,
And then also, what did she say here? The identity. I never even gave that a thought.
We did play a little bit more and
identity-
went down that road.
Because we have the same glasses are a salvation history. And Joseph's in there somewhere. But
Mhm.
what? St. Joseph's in there, I don't know.
yeah. Yeah, so I think those are two really good points. So, I think what we're trying to go after here is like, if we are going to kind of like use the sanctuary area, which is meant to be, it's meant to kind of like frame in the area where the sacrifice happens and where the altar is reserved. It seems to me that those pillars should be incorporated in some way, where they're, where they help to basically kind of like distinguish the area of the sanctuary from all the rest of the nave, and maybe even find a way of setting apart, making them look like a more ornate.
So are they referring to these ones?
Yeah.
Okay,
Yep.
so Now they're blending in.
They blend in.
Maybe
Yeah, using it to,
highlighting them.
yep, using it to frame in the area of the sanctuary. I think that's a good point. And then there's several people who commented too about saying, shouldn't St. Joseph be somehow part of the art that we incorporate into the sanctuary? Because that is the story of our parish, considering how many renovations we've been through and actually rebuilding, we've always been St. Joseph. And so that's a very, very long part of our history. And actually the reach of St. Joseph, when you talk about, including our school, our little humble school and the St. Joseph incredible mission of the Newman Center. So the Newman Center, some people might forget this, it's not a separate thing from the parish.
Right.
It's our parish's mission out there. And so Newman Center doesn't kind of operate on its own steam. They operate as an extension of St. Joseph's Parish. The one in Rapid City is different. So the Rapid City Newman Center that serves the
School.
the school of mines. It's its own kind of separate entity now. And so that whole kind of structure, the Newman Center kind of takes on a life of its own apart from a parish because it's its own parish. But for us, I like it this way. And it seems to fit more with the good experience that our students at Black Hills State University are having, because for them, they've not only been brought into the Newman Center, but they've also been brought into the life of the parish. And I have to think that, we look back and we say, man, it's kind of a miracle that, that Newman Center was built when the professionals consultation group that came in said, you'll never be able to raise this much money to build that Newman Center, right? And so the parish at the time, they kind of went ahead with it anyway. And it's like, well, St. Joseph's got a hand in that. St. Joseph has had a hand in our school. He's had a hand in our liturgy. He's had a hand in everything that we're enjoying as far as like all the people coming through OCIA. I think that is a story that needs to be told somehow on the wall of our sanctuary. So, those are kind of like design cues or art kind of cues that we would want to speak to, Kevin Clark about, when we're talking about what kind of story should that sanctuary tell, incorporating some art of St. Joseph in there would be, I think, more than appropriate.
Yeah, kind of to your point, Father and Whitney and Lori about kind of jumping ahead. And I'm guilty of that last time. We see an image and we either like it or we don't like it, and we try to get to the end. And we're really just at the beginning, putting criteria together like a scope that Kevin Clark had been and develop further based on the things that we think are important.
Yeah.
Because if we don't provide that, it's just so easy to go off or even do, what do you guys think of this? What do you think of that? This is what we did at another church. So I think you just need to be able to provide that criteria.
Yep. And I wanted to create this, after we've seen a lot of different kind of like generated images of what might be possible, it always comes back to this. And so, going back to the original principles, we'd like to utilize the things that we have. So the design elements that we've already got, and this design cue here for the altar is taken right from the original altar that we've already talked about. And I'm not even sold on this either, but I just put this here to say, we've kind of already got this basic shape. We've got the tabernacle with the altar top. We've got the design, what the original altar looked like. I left the angels on there to remind us that what used to be in that high altar, there were the two statues of the guardian angels or the guard angels that were watching over the tabernacle. It's hard to see them in that old photo. But if we were going to kind of say what existed here already, and what would we offer as
Here.
yeah. So they're in those little tiny niches inside the high altars there. And so basically what we're doing is we're saying this is kind of what was here originally, which I think is a cool story to tell.
Can you slide that down so I can kind of get a good shot of it for the camera? Thank you.
And so I basically tried to draw the best I could that altar, but the proportions are wrong. If you compare that altar with the tabernacle to what I drew, it's like that one there, you could tell is much wider. And this tabernacle probably shouldn't be this big on top of here, but it's the best I could do with looking at a little black and white photo. So, but I think it just kind of gives us an idea of the shape of the altar and the top piece and the tabernacle that we'd want to include underneath there. So,
That's the old church.
yep, that's our old
The
church.
original.
Yep,
Well, no, that's the second church.
yes, that's the second one. Yeah. And then,
But it had elements of the first church, the original church in it.
Yep.
Right?
yes. Yeah, so I think, yeah, I think too, is like, there, I think that's also something that I didn't want to kind of put up a bunch of stuff in front of Kevin Clark where we said, hey, we've already done a lot of AI
Yeah.
generated things and here, choose from this. But if he's kind of asking us what we like, and why we like it, you know, it's probably an okay thing to say, well, you know, we kind of like the way this looks because it kind of, it corresponds to what we know, a good sanctuary should look like,
Yes.
right?
Yeah.
And so I would only offer him those things if he asks, like, what are you guys thinking? You know,
Yeah, I think that would be fully appropriate because you could contrast it from one extreme from some of the things that we saw last week to I like the simplicity of what's there and don't add anything. And so I think from an architect standpoint, if I were Kevin Clark, I'd want to get some guidance on that. Do you prefer the blank wall behind the crucifix, or would you prefer some kind of ornamentation?
And we did do like a little bit more playing around, like with just other, options. And then I did ask one where I just said to the AI thing, okay, what would you do without any guidance at all? And so every single thing was just so beautiful that it like really gave me a lot of hope in whatever it is that the architects come up with, that there's potential here, whatever direction it goes in, that there's so much potential here. And it's really exciting that with relatively little cosmetic, improvements, that can make a huge impact, and so it's exciting to think about what the architect is going to come up with.
yeah, I agree.
Father, why did you do this rendition here, just out of curiosity? What are you showing us?
So what I was showing at the time, and this is, I presented this to the governance committee too. I was showing the things that, we could utilize, the elements of the old church that we could potentially utilize for our renovation right now. So I highlighted in yellow what were the altars. And so there's the side altar and then there's the main altar. And so we have one side altar. It's in my garage. The area in blue, I highlighted it here, but the one on this side is hidden behind the nativity. We have the top pieces to those side altars too. The area in yellow or in pink here is the kind of the stepped shelf that goes on top of the side altars. So we have both of these side altar top pieces. And we have one side altar, and then the main altar would need to be constructed. And I'm actually glad that we don't have that because, you would have a wooden frame, but all of these inserts, all of these little niches, it was basically a plastic.
We're getting stone.
Well, that's what I would suggest. And that seems to be where the documents kind of lead us, is to say, the tabernacle should be built on something that is a stony quality. So it corresponds to the stone of the altar of sacrifice. And so maybe these squares here, these openings would be where we could add something similar to what's in the stone of our altar of sacrifice. And then these areas on top, which used to be wood, which are wood currently on this top piece, we could match that to like the stone right here on top of the ambo.
Yeah.
So it's good to have stone on here, which matches the altar, because it's meant to kind of be seen as something that corresponds to the altar. So you have the altar of the word, and then you have the altar of the sacrifice. Well, what are the cues that you give it to like say, oh yeah, I see what they're doing there. We're moving from the altar of the word to the altar of the sacrifice. Well, the stone that you put on top can be a good way of just kind of linking them together. So, yeah, so the reason I highlighted these is because it's really hard to see in there, what I'm talking, what's different from this part to this part here. And, so I highlighted those areas to say, I'm interested in this, and let's abandon this whole ornate top piece here so that we basically keep the crucifix where it is. This is gonna be a lot easier.
And we ended up here.
Yeah, yeah. So, yeah, so there's gonna be a big question is like, if we put this big ornate top piece and that's gonna fill up this arch, what do we do with a crucifix? We don't really have another place that's dignified where that could go. So, and we might roll all this out to Kevin and he's say, nah, I see what you're thinking there, but maybe there's a better way of going forward with this. So, I'm just doing this to help him understand kind of like, how do you get from this to,
Something.
all of this,
Well, no,
Well,
so it's,
because these kind of correspond to what it was already originally in the church. And that was kind of the goal, to utilize what we have, or utilize the elements of what we have or what's already been here. Um, and, um, and to do this also, this is the second thing too, I want to keep going back to. I want to do this in a way that's not going to have to be undone if we come up with a longer term vision for
Right.
our church, right?
mhm,
So in my mind, I'm thinking, all right, if we have a brand new sanctuary built somewhere else, what have we just done to that, which might become a really, really beautiful parish hall? What have we done to that that has to be undone now? Where people 10 years down the road, 12 years down the road might say, hey, we just sunk $150,000 into that. It's like, to the degree possible, I'd like to have something where you still got a elevated area, you still got an arch in the wall, maybe the crucifix, maybe with some beautiful decoration, maybe with some art of St. Joseph. That still works for a parish hall,
mhm,
Yeah.
and we are not ripping everything out. Obviously, the altar would have to go, the high altar would have to go, but these are going to be beautiful, and we'd probably want to use these in maybe a new church down the road anyway.
mhm.
So, and then maybe somewhere down the road, we'd actually put something like this back on top of this, and we can, because we still got it. So, I highlighted the area in orange there to show that what we used to have is an altar rail. We've still got 3 sections of that altar rail that was originally in the church. Actually, there were 2 different styles of altar rails. There was the original one
Mhm.
that was basically, it looked like it was just done with
Spindles.
spindles.
Oh, okay.
I don't know if that was the original or this was the original. Do you remember? Okay.
Mm.
So they were just basically turned spindles. And then this was obviously done, that was more ornate, and the design cues really kind of match what was in the altar top piece. So we've got 3 sections of that. They're not the same size. But the one that we have that's outside of the Adoration Chapel, you can tell what they did is, um, so basically, these maybe were cut. Sections of that was cut and they were put together. they were seams together. And so, so maybe there was a cut made in between two of these openings, and they just made a straight cut. So maybe they cut off an end post on two sections, and they basically put them together. They seamed them together to make a longer section. So it can be done, it's,
And that's such a pretty railing. I loved learning that was part of.
The
it's
original
a
church.
gorgeous railing.
So the one in the corner here, you said, we don't think was part of the church. It just came from somewhere.
Came
That's
from somewhere
wild.
else. Yeah, totally wild. But I think we'd have enough section of the altar rail where we could have two pretty substantial, and that kind of gets into where we want to go today. If we were looking at creating an area that truly does distinguish the area of the nave from the area of the sanctuary. So everything that we read said it's done by elevation change. And so not going lower with the sanctuary as some churches are, but the sanctuary really needs to be elevated, which ours is. And then there's also a further distinction by the furnishing, and that's the altar rail. And again, if we really wanted to be careful with this, we could even top the altar rail, as many of them are, with the same stone that's on the top of the ambo and on the high altar. So if we were going to top it with, like, say, just a white kind of a marbley stone, it's got a real soft edge on it. That would be a great teaching moment where you'd say, the priest offers the sacrifice on this altar, right? But the people of God would receive Holy Communion also from their own altar, the altar that's designated for them. And that's why it was called an altar rail. It's not really, it's been kind of informally called a communion rail, but it was understood to be the altar rail of the laity. And so when they approached their altar, they had a stone slab too. And it's like, would we ever be able to use it as an altar rail where people could receive communion from? I hope so one day. But it's still the most beautiful furnishing that you could put there to distinguish the area of the sanctuary from the area of the nave. So, and again, it's stuff we've already got.
Would there have to be any, volume of it?
Yes. Yeah, so the section I have in my garage is the section that's going to need the most help. So what we've got is we've got the upright panel with all the cutouts and everything. But we would really have to go a long way. And even the rail that we have outside the Adoration Chapel, if you wiggle that top piece, it's very loose. And so you'd want something that when people go and they kneel at it, it's solid as a rock. The other thing too is where you have the tabernacle. The church says there should be an area where people can come close and kneel for silent and personal prayer. That would be the perfect place. Anybody could go up there, walk into the church, there's the tabernacle. I'm going to go kneel right in front of the sanctuary to be close to Jesus. So to me, it accomplishes three important things: area of prayer, area of distinction, and the area of maybe receiving communion. That would be my hope.
I visited our daughter up in Minot this winter, and we went to one of the churches there. They had just redone, and then I have been thinking about this since you showed that, because they did that all along theirs also, just what we're talking about. And so I said to her, do you have communion there? And she said, no one ever goes up there. And so they don't use theirs. I don't know why, but now when I'm looking at it, they do have like padding there. So you would assume that was the intent, but for some reason, it's just there for decoration. But I mean, it's beautiful. It does exactly what, but then, there's just a little padding on each side of it.
Do you think the priest there does not promote it?
I don't know, but when I saw it after learning about all this, I said, does everyone kneel here and use as a communion rail? And she said, no, no one does.
It's also the case at the cathedral. So the cathedral's got the altar rail in the front.
Yep.
People can go in and kneel at the altar rail and pray.
Mhm.
Okay.
You know, like, before or after mass or something like that. They're free to do that. But it hasn't really kind of been reinstituted again where if they wanted to receive Holy Communion, they could go kneel at the rail and there'd be a minister there. So,
Yeah, sometimes
They
that's
come
hard.
down
Yeah,
too far. You couldn't, you'd go behind them.
Right,
You see,
yeah.
correct. Yep.
Logistically, functionally, when there's so many Eucharistic ministers in different spots and places, it's hard to.
Yeah.
How would you go back and approach that?
Yep.
But it would make sense to use for, like you said, just a prayer, then that would make sense why it was there. But I just noticed that after we talked about this, and I thought, oh my gosh, that's exactly it's beautiful.
Mhm.
Send me that picture and then I can share it with the group if that's okay.
Okay, sure.
Yeah.
So I'll see if I can find a better one. Yeah, it's St. Leo's Roman Catholic Church in Minot, and they went through this huge renovation, and when you go in there, it's breathtaking, but.
the reason I asked if the priest maybe didn't promote it was because when I was in Ipswich, and I've been there a lot, they had taken the rail out and then they put it back in, and I just saw this last time, they put pads there to kneel, and he said, during his homily, talked about it, pointed it out, and he said, we're gonna try to see if we can get you to use it. So he's a young
Nice.
guy, and he's talking about it, and mom's like, why do we have to? And I said, Mom, why wouldn't
Be
you?
a retraining thing. for
I
commissioners.
think, and-
Because this has been what's accepted for the last 20 years.
Mhm.
You know, so it would.
A lot longer than 20 years.
It would have to be. And you also, as a priest, would have to stay in the sanctuary and go along the rail. And everybody would have to conform unless you had, the other people on the sides like we do right now.
Mhm.
It would be
It
interesting.
would be faster.
Yeah.
It would be faster. They distribute
I
that way.
was in Texas, in Georgia with Tabor and his family, and they were in a rented one, but they had a rail and that priest, and they're a little bit different there. And you might even know who that is, Father. But anyway, we all knelt, and he just kept going. I mean, he didn't even finish and wait for us to say amen. He was saying, and then he'd just go on and then go down next. It's like, that's how I grew up. So
Open your
my
mouth.
perspective.
Open your mouth. Open your mouth.
It's not like that. He said the body of Christ, but he wasn't waiting, he just
Yeah.
kept repeating it and just kept going down the line. It's
Yeah.
like, I don't even know what they are. I mean,
So the other thing I highlighted in that picture there, was this middle area here. So we actually have the two gates that go, so there's two gates that open up. And so when the priest goes up in procession with the ministers who go up into the sanctuary, they pass through the gates. And then, I think the gates get closed, behind him. And then, he goes into the sanctuary and he incenses around the altar. So those gates, again, it's like they're not rotten wood, but they're just wood that is hardwood, very, very heavy hardwood. Like, it's like white oak or something like that. It's incredibly heavy. It's got really, really heavy gate hardware on it. And so if those were ever redone, like sanded down, refinished, probably reglue all the joints on it, it would be absolutely beautiful. So,
So then you'd for sure have to somehow have the rails attached to the floor to hold that heavy of a,
yes,
they couldn't be just set there.
yes. Yeah, and I don't know if you guys saw us so we put that bigger pray-do up there because the little ones, people would come and they would kneel on them, and then gradually the pray-do starts scooting closer and closer to the sanctuary. So in between people, you got to go, push it back out again. So we thought, well, let's put that heavier one up there, but it still happens. And
But it's so
now
nice.
now,
It's so
oh,
nice.
it's so much better. It's a lot sturdier.
Mhm.
Yep.
And
Side note, are you finding more people using that as time goes on?
Father Max and I were both of the opinion that gradually more people are using
Mhm.
are kneeling to receive.
And compared to 20 years ago when I came into the church, when receiving on the tongue was really unusual. And now I'm just amazed at how many people do.
I did it at the Women's Center last week and I can't remember the last time I've ever done it. When I went to the Company House.
Mhm.
It was so beautiful and I thought, you know, it's
This is
kind of
it.
fearful because
It is.
you don't want it to fall and how's it gonna work? And I went home, I talked about it for half an hour with my husband, I texted my daughters, how beautiful that mass was, and
Mhm.
it was great, but you just have to get, I mean, I feel too fumbly to do the kneeler thing yet,
Yeah.
but that was a big step because I don't remember, I mean, when we started receiving in the hand.
Yeah.
And so after learning more about it this last year and listening to you guys present about the Eucharist and the sacredness of it, and I thought it was wonderful to just
Yeah.
have it go directly from
Yeah.
water to, it was great. So anyway.
Yeah, so I think that covers all of the elements there that I highlighted and why I highlighted them. Basically, so if we are going to start from what do we have, what could we contribute with it? The reason why the side altars came up is because I would hope to find a more appropriate way of displaying Mary and Joseph. And so right now, Mary and Joseph are kind of standing on two, I don't know what you would call those, like an end table. And they're obviously something that was made for like a residential kind of setting.
Yeah, just a decorative pedestal.
Yep,
They're attractive, but they're
They are.
not like sacred.
yep. So they're probably, I don't know, I would estimate them about 32 inches tall, maybe 36, maybe 36 would be pushing it. I think.
Yeah, I don't think they're that tall.
Yeah. So I'm thinking they're about 32 inches tall. If we had them on those side altars, not only is the altar, your altar is probably about 40, I think it's about 44 inches if I remember right. But then the top piece that goes on this, look at how high
Mhm.
the statues sit on top of the altar top piece. And so to me, it's like, it's really, really getting the statues up high where we would like to, where
Would
we'd
it
like to
compete
have.
with our crucifix?
If they were
No.
out of the sanctuary to the sides.
Yeah, and then I'd like to have them outside of the sanctuary. Because if you remember, one of the things that Second Vatican Council cautioned the church in the liturgical reforms was, it's not really appropriate to have devotional statues in the area where the sacrifice takes place. Why? So when it instructed us, what kind of figures should we have right there in that narrow window where this sacrifice, where heaven is meeting earth, how should the saints be depicted? You remember that? You remember
Mhm.
reading about that?
Heavenly.
Yep. So the saints should be depicted in their heavenly form. Well, how does that look? Well, that's really up to the artist to tell us. And there was that great section in the book, I think it was the art and architecture, the Catholic church architecture that, you know, in the modern time, all of these saints, started to be kind of painted or sculpted in the drive was to really kind of depict them in a realism sense. So if we were going to like do an image of Saint Warren, okay, basically that's what we would be going for. And to say, you know what, where in that area where heaven is open to us, we should be seeing an image of the saints that are now free of their earthly bondage, right? And so that's not what Warren's going to look like in heaven. He's going to look like something else. We see each other as still bearing the burden of our earthly bondage, right? And it's like, well, what does that look like? The form, the form of the saint who was enjoying heaven. Well, it doesn't look like us, because there's signs all over our flesh, that we're still bearing up our earthly bondage.
Mhm.
And so, okay, you got Mary and Joseph. They're traditionally the two figures that you put flanking the sanctuary. But really, that we should maintain that tradition, especially for us, a parish of St. Joseph's, but they should be set apart from the sanctuary near it so that we can reserve the art in the sanctuary for what heaven is like. Right?
Mhm.
So,
Listen, it opens it up as a devotional place where you could have candles or something, which we don't want people going in and out of the sanctuary to light a candle to Mary or St. Joseph. But if it was outside the sanctuary, then we could do that.
right. So that's why I highlighted the side altar there too, because, if we could use those, it would be an altar and a top that kind of matches what we've got going on here too.
As we talk about this, we just met with another kid that's discerning, coming into the church. And I, I've been involved with RCIA off and on for 25 years. And what I'm really, really, really struck by, especially in the last 2 years, is the number of people that are coming to church because of the mass. Where before it was like they'd get to the mass like 3 months into the class, and now it's like, and this one kid said, he came, he grew up kind of evangelical, and he was really looking for something that felt reverent, like at his church, it was kind of like a meeting space, and a friend of his invited him to the Newman Center, and he came to mass, and he said, "This is it," and I mean, in the last couple, 3 years, that's what you hear as people walk into the mass, and the more beautiful and reverent our sanctuary is, I think the more powerful that impact is.
Absolutely,
Yeah,
absolutely.
yeah,
Which means we've got a lot of work.
yeah, yeah. But I'm so hopeful. I know it's AI, but just the fact that, I mean, we saw even more things. It was amazing. So it's like the world is our oyster. Whatever the architects come up with, there's a lot of possibilities out there that could make this place just beautiful.
A whole lot of destruction, dismantling, just to make some, improvements without
Yeah.
too crazy.
Do you know what happens when you do improvements? Everything else looks shabby, then when
Yeah.
you say, oh no.
Maybe certain stuff.
You get that beautiful blue up there and the rest of it would
Yeah.
go, oh my gosh.
When you say that sets the
That's
stage
true.
for the next phase.
Yeah.
That's exactly what's gonna happen.
And it wouldn't
Beautiful
have to be
job.
blue, because then if it does
No,
run
I'm saying
into, then you have to do,
anything
yeah,
with color up there.
yeah.
From,
We have
It was,
from this to
Yeah.
anything with color in the rest of.
but there was that other picture that had the beautiful gold tones and the brown.
and the paneling and yeah.
The woods that are- Maybe that's more the direction without having to go through the entire.
Well, we can start with what we have first, though.
Yeah.
Okay.
So the other part about this too is like, and I'm not married to this. So the aspect of this I'm really married to is I'm committed to getting the tabernacle there.
Right.
So we should ask the question though, is it possible for us to gain a little bit more space in front of that altar of the altar of sacrifice? Because the priest really needs to be able to access all the way around that altar. And that's also a part of the general instruction of the Roman Missal, in that the priest has to get all the way around it because we incense all around it. And in order to do that, we'd need to have at least 36 inches of top step here in front of where our altar of sacrifice lands. So you've probably seen me and Father Max both. When we go around the front of the altar to incense, we step down
Mhm.
and we turn and we have to pause and incense the crucifix on the wall, and then we keep going around. So that's kind of why, it says the priest has to get all the way around it. So I'm wondering, how much trouble are we gonna get into if we say, hey, Kevin, is there a way we can get another, 3 feet in front of that altar? And then how are we gonna go about doing that? I like what Father Max said last week when he said, the curve in the sanctuary is not a bad idea for us because remember, the central aisle is not perpendicular to the back wall.
Mhm.
And so they're off. And if we tried to square up that first step into the sanctuary, do you make it parallel to the back wall? And then therefore it's not perpendicular to the central aisle coming into it? Or do you make it perpendicular to the central aisle and then it's skewed according to where the back wall is? It's not parallel to the back wall now. So it's a noticeable problem that would probably be a lot more pronounced if we squared that off. So Father Max had a good point, and he says, I don't know if we'd want to mess with changing that from a curved step.
Kind of a can of worms.
It is kind of a
But-
can of worms. And then if that's the right move to keep just a curved sanctuary there, because we don't care, it's not squared to anything, it doesn't need to be.
No.
Then how do you put straight altar rails right in front of this, and how do you make that look right? Can that even be done?
Not only that, but if you go up there and stand like we did, you can really see the problem that
Mhm.
we're gonna lose the whole front rows
Yep.
to do that. But I honestly don't think, there's no reason why they can't be straight out. You could still see the design of the curve. It's not gonna take away from it because this is straight across. Your altar of sacrifice is straight across. The altar or the rail of the altar rail then would be straight across. I
But
don't know.
how would the priest, wouldn't the priest have to come off of out of the sanctuary? The rail was set further back than the archway. Am I following you correctly?
No, still have to be a gate though, right?
There doesn't have to be a gate. The gates don't have to go in there. So there
Okay.
needs to be at least a separation.
Right,
So it would work better than what we have now. So we've got a kind of a double pray-do there,
Mhm.
where the priest, instead of being able to go straight into the sanctuary, he has to go around
Right.
the kneelers or the pray-do to go into the sanctuary. This would be like now you bow, or when we have a tabernacle, we genuflect.
Mhm.
And then we go between the altar rails into the sanctuary. So that's kind of makes more sense liturgically. So it either needs to be just a big wide open gap, or it needs to, or it could have the gates that actually
And then
close.
the gates have to close, or they have to open inside, right?
Yes.
Mhm.
I honestly don't think another straight line, because you already have straight lines. The curves match where the parishioners sit and that line, I think, and then the arch too, everything, I think would go together. I don't see any problem with that at all. You just have to decide, how far back. And then, are you bringing the steps out further?
Well, if we brought
The altar.
yeah,
Because you can't push the altar back because that's even less room back there.
yeah, that's gonna squeeze the area between the
Mhm.
altar and the tabernacle.
You're gonna really see this if you go upstairs, because there's just not a lot of room. We stood up there last week and just looked and it's like, yeah,
Yeah.
it's way smaller when you just go look.
Yeah.
it's, thinking about it, it kind of almost feels big here, but then we're missing an altar there.
Yeah.
We're missing the other one.
So, we have a parish in our diocese where the altars are so close together. When you genuflect, your foot hits the,
Back altar.
it hits,
The
yeah,
high
the
altar.
rear nose.
Just your.
Not ideal.
Just your-
No, actually, most of our priests do it, so it's Fort Pier.
Mm.
Yeah.
Along those lines, is there enough room then between the back of the altar and where the tabernacle would sit? Does the altar need to move forward to be able to accommodate that?
Yeah, there would be enough room, but where you would actually start to get pinched is like, if we ever had a mass here where we had several concelebrants, that's where you'd notice it. So right now, the way that the altar of sacrifice is arranged, yeah, that's, we're kind of okay for a number of concelebrating priests if they were to ever come. You add you add the tabernacle in there, that's gonna impact how many priests you can get in the sanctuary. If we could move that altar forward a little bit, I don't think moving it forward. I think moving it forward maybe, a couple of feet would be a vast improvement. But again, I'm not married to this idea, but if Evan Clark can say, there's a good way forward with this, I would make everything make sense. So you can have your place, your altar rail, you have buy you a little bit more room in the sanctuary, have some floor space around the front of your altar of sacrifice. I'm all ears, but I just don't want this to become like a re-engineering of the
Right.
whole sanctuary. I just don't think that would be right for us.
The other thing, like you'd pointed out before, is that the flooring was built around the altar that's there now. And so if that gets moved, that means changing some flooring.
Yeah. So the altar was bonded to the subfloor, and then the wooden floor was put in.
Oh, wow.
So if you lift it up, if you could even lift up that altar, you'd have to probably, I don't know how you unbond an altar from the subfloor. But probably you'd chisel it out or something like that. Hopefully it doesn't get damaged.
Yeah, how did they bond it? I don't remember that part.
It was I think Father Hoyt said it was some kind of
Adhesive, yeah.
construction.
Liquid
adhesive,
nails or,
Yeah.
yeah.
We probably use an oscillating roll and.
Yeah.
It's bonded to wood underneath there, I'm assuming.
It's a plywood substrate.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
you could get that off.
Yeah. So the top itself, when the altar was, before the altar was dedicated, the top was brought in. And we had a team of football players from Black Hills State University, and it was like 8 of them carrying just the altar top in and them shuffling in, trying to get it all the way in. It was really an interesting, yeah,
Yeah, it would have been
it was heavy.
a beast.
Yeah.
So my final thoughts, I guess, on the altar before you move on altar rail or community rail, is that there's really only two ways to do that. One would be if you maintain the radius, just like the furnishing, just like the pews, it would have to be radius. It'd be something new. And then the other alternative is it's segmented. There's short sections. Whatever length would kind of make sense, whether it's like 4 feet or 6 feet. The shorter the segment, you probably wouldn't notice that it's not a full radius, but it could really just be one or the other. And of course, having it curved, you lose the authenticity of the original rail.
And then a lot more expense just in terms of like re-engineering the pieces parts.
That's really evident. Is that the keys and their own radius on the front, and so there's certainly some cost associated with that.
I'm keeping a record of everybody's comments here too, just so,
I've also got a transcript going on
oh, perfect,
this,
okay,
so, yeah.
okay. I mean, I think everything is, I mean, yeah, everything should be kind of like put in front of, the guy we want to give us some ideas of design, so.
It's very
Um,
exciting.
Yeah, so the other thing, along with the shape of the sanctuary, you know, if Mary and Joseph and a side altar kind of had their proper place, you know, so you basically either take both of the side altars completely out of the sanctuary, you set them on the ground floor of where the nave is, right? Well, those are probably going to be sits, you know, right in front of some stained glass window. And
Mhm.
you know, so there's a little section of wall on both sides of the sanctuary when you come off that last step, but it's a lot narrower than what those side altars are. And so the side altar would overhang where the stained glass window is. So we could look at actually cutting those side altars down. So that's a possibility. And then you would basically narrow the top piece that goes on top of that altar too. So the thing is, once you get something that narrowed, does that kind of like lose its design integrity? Where you might say, nah, that just doesn't look like it doesn't look like an altar and an altar top anymore. It looks like some piece of doll furniture that you created. So those are all questions. And then the other thing too was like, well, there is another possibility in you could show by moving Mary and Joseph a step down from the top platform of the sanctuary, that they're not a part of the sanctuary where the sacrifice is taking place, but they're very close to it. And it's clear because they're a step down from that, it's a place distinct outside of the main sanctuary where we've got kind of already framed in. Um, so I don't know. I'd be interested to, hear some of Kevin Clark's thoughts on that too.
Mhm.
So,
Hmm.
do you guys have any other thoughts on that?
So as far as who, the people that are seated in the sanctuary would remain the same. The priest and the deacon, occasionally a server, depending on the mass, possibly concelebrants. But you can't get a whole lot. You'd never be able to have the whole choir of servers up there.
No, so when we've had bishop here before, so we were able to sit bishop and deacon and an MC in the three chairs where normally the priest sits.
Mhm.
And then on the other side, there was me and Father Max, and I think we had another server sitting by us. So 3 and 3.
Mhm.
That's what we can get in the sanctuary right now comfortably.
Mhm.
Without a lot of fuss and without making it look like it's just weird and cluttered. Um, so I think that's kind of where our maximum is about what we seat in there. There's a lot of churches too, where if you've got several concelebrating priests, you basically kind of put them in the front row of the church where the laity sit. And then when it comes time in the Eucharistic prayer, they would basically come out of the pews and come up into the sanctuary for the Eucharistic prayer. And then after they received Holy Communion, they go back out into the pews again. So it's not like we would never be able to navigate that.
Mhm.
We've done that before, so
Mhm. We used to have pastoral ministry days here.
we did.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's crazy.
yeah. So we have had
Multiple concelebrants.
multiple concelebrants. I don't remember when we had pastoral ministry days, did they get all the priests in the sanctuary?
I was trying to remember that
Or did they concelebrate from
from
the
the
pew?
view. I don't
I
know.
don't remember that. I was a priest then.
Yeah, you were, because it was,
Wasn't there.
I just don't remember.
Yeah, because it was, I know around the 2006 time, that was the case, because, yeah.
Okay. Yeah, so the other thing too is like, we'd have to be very careful with is if we thought there may be a good way for us to get altar rails kind of permanently fixed to the floor, um, is there going to be enough room for the casket when we have a funeral?
Mm-hmm.
And so bringing all of that out, permanently fastening that to the floor, we might actually have to, think about the possibility of removing some kind of section or two of those front pews, and just a cutout, basically. So we shorten or we make the aisle wider, um, where that last row or the first row of pews are, maybe the first two rows of pews. And that's what a lot of churches do to make room for the casket. So basically, um, the first two rows of pews are just cut back so that the aisle actually widens when you get up to the front. So that may be something we have to consider too.
Lighting, you would anticipate lighting staying the same, like not messing with that a whole lot
Yeah, I think that's I just don't know. It's like
in the sanctuary?
if we're in the sanctuary, if we're looking at this and actually thinking about doing some treatment to the back wall, without having to like reconstruct this whole kind of like lights, kind of like
Uh-huh.
lighting box here. And that's also the box that holds our organ speaker, right? Can we at least think about, we should probably be thinking about the ceiling color on that lighting area. What should that ceiling color be? And then maybe changing the color of the lights in there. So it's not,
So glaringly white.
yeah, the white lights really wash out. They wash out color.
A number of years ago, they swapped those out to the new LEDs because they used to be incandescent and they were a lot warmer. And when they swapped them out to the LEDs, I think at the time, like the bright white was really the only thing available. Obviously now you have a lot more options. But it was stark and like it's really difficult to create any kind of ambiance because it only goes so far down. The light, like at Easter Vigil, we couldn't do anything with that.
You try. There was one day there was mass and the lights are dim and we talked about this or you're trying that. And then all of a sudden, like right before communion, it just lit up.
Somebody
And you
turned on all the lights.
Turn the lights up. It's like,
Actually, when I was processing down the aisle, I was asking God, let the lights stay out.
yeah,
Yeah,
We had all those beautiful
Yeah.
candles set up there. It's like, man, that would have been
yeah.
yeah.
smoking sexy.
It was, and as soon as that came on, it was like, holy smokes, that
Yeah.
was great. But
Yeah.
somebody must not have been able to see their paper, just went and turned the lights up or something.
Yeah, what I've noticed is like, and I typically do this if I have to go in and turn the lights on, I just turn the down lights on. And, it's like, it's definitely not as bright in the church, but I think the color is so much better because, for one thing, you're not highlighting the popcorn ceiling.
Yeah.
And it really cuts down on a lot of that white light that gets reflected back down on us.
It does make a difference and we've noticed it and we're aware because we've discussed it, but 98% of the people just think, oh, somebody didn't turn the lights on.
Right.
Yeah. It's so dark in here.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting. A couple nights ago, I haven't told you this. I started just asking AI more questions because Joe was watching something stupid on TV. And anyway, I was asking about the lighting and what do you do? Because then there's the lighting and there's the acoustics. Because I remember people saying Father Francis, they could totally not understand them, but then they go up to Bell and they could understand them just fine because the acoustics were so different. But it was talking about for the lighting, how many places will just paint it a much darker color and obviously not have the uplights. And then it's like you go into retail places now where they've done that and the ceiling just kind of recedes. You just don't notice it. The more white it is, the more the light bounces off of it, the more you notice, either the shadows of the light on the crazy angles and stuff like that. But also I was asking about the lighting, like where we have the crosses now, because I always thought like if we wanted to do the pendant lighting, that we'd need more lights. And it was saying, no, if you have 12 lights, which is about how many we have now, with the lights they have now, actually that would be fine. And then, so anyway, things that I would have thought the lighting, there's no way we could change out that lighting. And it was saying, actually, yeah.
And do you think that's why they put them up? The cross lighting they have right now is because they thought it lit up more?
What, you mean why they raised them up?
Well, why do we have those up there?
I'm sure somebody thought they would look really cool, And then during the renovation in 2007, because they used to be brown, so they were very obvious. So in the renovation in 2007, Father Tim had them painted white so that they were less obvious, and then also raised them up to make them less obvious. Ironically, that now casts more of a shadow, so it makes the roof line more obvious by raising that. Whereas when they were lower and on one height, it almost formed a false ceiling. So you didn't notice the ceiling quite as much although they took the paneling off too. That was a good move. But anyway, again, the architect's going to be the expert, but things that I didn't even think maybe would be on the table might not be as expensive and then be better lighting for a, parish hall eventually. It wouldn't be as stark as what we have now.
Yeah.
And so.
Back to the sanctuary area, maybe it was off of your images that you presented last week, Amy, but it's maybe some discussion that was for the baldacchino, whether we want Kevin Clark to consider that, if we want to add that to our scope or not.
Yeah, I think that's all gotta be on the table. What that wall has to communicate that it's not communicating right now. I want to let the church have its fullest voice possible within reason, within our constraints. And he may say something like, I wouldn't be surprised if he says something like, this area here is so short or so squat right down on top of this arch. You may not have room for a baldacchino in there. I wouldn't be surprised.
And somewhere somebody made reference to that whole false ceiling, that's intention was to kind of serve as a baldacchino. And I was like, oh, I just thought it was just functional.
Yeah.
And then maybe it was you or Father Max, somebody then talking about like if you painted the underside the light blue, that maybe then all of a sudden becomes a baldacchino, or chino or whatever.
And then take this same wood, this stained wood, with that stain there and put some kind of decorative, wooden trim around it. And that would have to be a curved thing that follows the curve of that stage light area. It seems to me like you could put some design details in there. So we would be talking about like stained wood trim, and some paint under here and some different colored light fixtures. If that gets us where we need to go, is that, yeah, that's a baldacchino. That's what I'm interested to find out. But I think all of this goes together. Yeah.
Is getting rid of that not getting rid of, but elevating that ceiling off the table?
I
Just expense.
don't,
Do you know how much that would be?
Nope.
no,
Wouldn't that really kind of relieve some of the problem? Just start anew?
well, that would be amazing if, he said you guys could raise that ceiling there without a lot of difficulty. The thing that we'd have to resolve before we did, there's organ speakers up in there.
Because we have our pipes in back.
Maybe,
Hopefully.
So if we can find a place to park the pipe organ and create the music area in the back, then there's really not much left. That's kind of that's kind of holding us to that kind of that light box there. Unless there's some kind of bracing under there that the roof needs, I don't know.
You think there would be?
I wouldn't think there would be, but
Mhm.
if those drawings were easily available, Father, I'd be happy to look at them.
Oh, nice.
Just to get more familiar with, what the structure looks like.
I know, Eric Ulmer is probably the only guy that we've actually had up in there, right?
Who's still around?
Yeah,
Yeah.
so I know he's been up there. Yeah, I don't, he probably doesn't remember what's in there either, but yeah, I'll see if I can dig up those drawings and find out if it's just an empty box.
That
So-
would actually be pretty cool.
Yeah.
I would think, yeah, I would really like to see that too. And especially like what Whitney and Lori said about, let's make the most of those columns there so we can emphasize the verticality. So if we can get a little bit more elevation out of that, the light box, and then really emphasize it within the decoration around the columns, that would be beautiful.
Isn't there like four columns? There's obviously the two in that picture, but aren't there columns off to the sides too? Or it was just facades or
There's right outside of the
almost with the stained glass windows?
stained glass windows, yeah.
Yeah,
But remember, one of them is real and one.
Yeah, because on the back, one is real and one is just put in for symmetry.
Just to balance that.
Yeah.
that's forgot about that.
That's
Yeah.
structural.
Yeah, another reason to look at the drawings, so that the wall would have been reinforced concrete block, and so those columns are pilasters by definition. And so
Yeah.
they're larger, more reinforcement, more steel, so they're actually structural holding up the wall. So if there are one or more that are decorative, then it would be good to.
Well, one of these is real.
Yeah, one of the
One
two,
of these is real.
Yeah.
The other is decorative.
It is.
yeah, and it was just put in for symmetry. And then if looking at the picture of the altar, so right between the cross and the stained glass window, there's the outer columns. So just on the inside of the stained glass window, and those are the ones that are big and pointy, and
They're real.
they're real. Yeah, they're both real.
So
But the back ones, only one is real.
so the one that was added for symmetry would have been part of the more recent renovation.
Right, that would have been the 2007 renovation.
And if you go look now, you'll see which one is real. You'll be able
Yeah.
to look from the ceiling, the way
Oh, okay.
the ceiling goes like.
It's one of these two?
One of these.
One of
is
those
real
two
and
back
one is
ones,
not.
yeah.
I wanna say this one is real on this side. but
I think she's right, because that's right underneath the point, the highest point of the roof
Yeah,
line.
That's
So I think that one's structural, the other one is just aesthetic.
Yep. Yep. I
Yeah,
think Kevin spotted that too when he was here.
oh, okay,
Yeah.
yeah. The other thing is, because if you could get rid of the baldacchino or false roof or whatever it is, because where the stained glass windows are, because those were in before this one was put in, they go higher than that baldacchino. And so you've got that odd little cutout on either end, like where the baldacchino meets the wall, and it's got to be cut out so you can see the top of the stained glass window.
I also don't think it's not coming up the same
On either side, no. The two windows are
Which is
symmetrical
probably
with
why
each other.
flat.
Yeah, but could you
Even though-
raise it 4 feet? If you didn't have the organ speakers there? I think that was I think you
Speculating.
wanna. So I mean, could you raise it a couple feet,
Right now.
I mean, because it would be like, what's the lowest point? That's your limit. Yeah,
you
And
might be
it
able to
goes,
walk and
you know,
look
up and
see,
then
you might be
beat
able to
you.
go and say, yeah, you look at the sight line, tops of the windows. And then on the other side, you might be able to tell just by looking at it from the rest of the church.
Yeah.
but anyway, if it's supposed to be serving as a baldacchino, if it was decorative, then it would maybe be more obvious that it was serving as that. Right now, it just looks functional, like a conference room or stage.
Do you remember?
Yes, the sarcophagus. Yes, I remember that.
kids always ask, Mom, what is that? I go, I don't know.
Well, because at the time, that's when Nightmare Before Christmas, the movie was out. And so my kids were like, that's a sarcophagus, you know, and then they'd sing the song. We opened the sarcophagi. Oh, you weren't here. It's gone. Yeah.
I
Yeah.
can't even describe what it
Huh.
was. It didn't really look like what it was supposed to be.
It looked like, some people called it a UFO spaceship because it was like an elongated octagonal three-dimensional thing, and it had lights inside of it also,
It did, it had.
and speakers inside of it.
it had
And,
several functions.
oh my gosh, it was horrible. It
At
was,
the time, it must have,
Whoever put it up.
must have fit the purpose and intent of the
think-
well,
movie.
and some people were attached to it, you know, yeah,
Indicative of what it's actually supposed to be.
it was
Me looking up sarcophagus.
oh, you know, like a mummy's
Give
coffin.
an idea what-
Yeah. Yeah. Because I mean, it really looked like a spaceship because the lights were
Yeah.
coming out of it. So it's like the spaceship Close Encounters coming down. It was,
Yeah, I remember that from the original construction.
yeah.
Interesting, was very interesting.
So I think the question then is, can we
That was
do,
mine.
can we do something with the sanctuary ceiling to make it look more like a baldacchino and have better lighting?
Yeah. Or do we just reseat it and then actually have a baldacchino that's separate?
That's kind of a question for Kevin.
That's the architect,
Yes.
yeah.
Think
Yep.
that we can look at that. Just know.
Yep.
Any amount of research we do, we're not.
Can we do?
Yeah.
I mean,
I'm going to need to skedaddle before too very long, but, what else did you want to?
very visual, I'm not-
I think that was the last. Okay, so
Oh,
this
huh.
meeting, sanctuary size, shape, check. Altar rails, check. And the statues, check. And distinguishing or framing the area of the sanctuary from the nave. So that's,
Yeah, yeah,
that's,
I think we've covered all of this.
I think I replaced that last one with the ceiling, the sanctuary ceiling.
Mm-hmm.
So I think those were all of the elements we wanted to talk about tonight, and
Okay.
So what's up for next week in terms of like beginning to think, process our brains around it? Was it the organ
so
next week?
next week, I hope, is gonna be the organ.
Mhm.
And so Justin has been trying
Are
to
we a week
contact,
ahead?
what's that?
Are we a week ahead?
We are.
Yeah.
ahead, yeah.
Cause you guys are that good.
Okay.
But
Wish this, but.
But you know what, it turns out this might be okay because there's built-in extra Wednesday or two. Where if Tracy, Whitney and Lori come on board, we can kind of look at, everything that we talked about again. Maybe there's gonna be a much, broader discussion on some of this stuff. The whole goal in this is like, I want to be as clear as I can about what we are wanting him to look into when he comes. And so, are these the elements that we want to kind of focus on? Is this going to kind of spill out into something else? Are we going to decide as a group, it's like, hey, let's just abandon this thing, one element or one aspect of it? So when Kevin shows up here, we're going to make the most of our time with him. He's going to be here 2 days. And so I hope that we've already been able to talk to the organ installer. And so we can basically hear from the organ installer what options we have. Hang in those pipes on the wall. Where could they go? Where are they going to be the best sound for our church? Where can we kind of like begin to think about carving out an area in the back of the church for our music, right? So that's all coming. And if we have to flip-flop these last two, where if the organ guy is going to be a little bit more delayed, we can put that one off to the last one. And maybe the next time then we would look at that area where the music is. So the organ, the piano, the microphone, the riser area, maybe clearing all of that out and creating a bigger area where we can have our credence table, have all of the things that we need for the celebration of the mass, all the extra torches that you bring out with solemnities and everything, and kind of creating an area where all of that could be hidden behind a screen.
A ramp.
So you know where this is going, don't you, Dave? David?
I'll keep going.
Okay, you know how our bishop loves handicap ramps.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
And so if we have a 16 or an 18 inch rise into our sanctuary, that means if we're going to renovate our sanctuary, he might want to see a 16 or 18 foot
Yeah,
handicap ramp to get up into there.
yeah. Well, I
Can't
think
we just get volunteers to lift somebody up there?
There you go.
That's my whole point.
That is my whole point.
Or like even the electronic thing that just goes, you know,
a little bit of good news, and we were up there last Wednesday, there's only 2 steps, and I
Right.
my tape measure, but I think there's about 7 inches. So we're talking 14, so it'd be 14 feet, so a little bit less.
Man, it seems like more than that when I
It
go
does,
sit
I
up in there.
there were 3 steps. myself.
It is a huge amount, though. I remember the church we came from, there's 2 steps from our parking lot into the church, and we wanted to make those handicap accessible, and it was a huge deal. You would have
That's
had to
huge.
have, you'd think you could just have a little sloping ramp on 2 steps.
Mhm.
And it had to be a huge clearance deal.
Yeah.
Right, yes, those 2
Mhm.
little steps from the back parking lot.
Right.
You couldn't do it. We couldn't do it. And so then they, around front, they did the
Well, the mayor's
concrete.
Catholic.
They
She
did
should've done
the,
that.
yeah, well, I don't think she was back then. They did the concrete then part out front, because that front door then, there was 2 steps there, 2 outside, but it was easier to do the concrete outside to get into that ground level door
Yeah,
than to put some kind of a ramp already inside the building
Yeah.
for just 2 steps. It was crazy.
I'm gonna propose, if it comes down to that, I'm gonna propose to the bishop, if you want us to build a very, very sturdy ramp, 14 feet long, that will store down in the basement. So if we ever have a priest here, he's crippled, or if we have one of our lectors who's mobility impaired or anything, we'll go dig those things out of the basement and we'll set them up there. And they will be solid as a rock, guaranteed. I think that's what I would propose. That makes more sense. Where, you have a plan to assist somebody. It's like, I was at the North American College when we had a priest who he was very, very mobility impaired. And so he was assisted up into the sanctuary by 2 other guys. And, basically there was a temporary ramp that was put there just for him. And when his time there at the North American College was over, they picked up the ramp and it was gone. See that?
of course, you'd still have to like set the space aside, so it's still gonna compromise your design, even if it's not permanent, right? But
I understand his wanting to have that and a necessity sometimes, but logistically, is your church just not able to even fit something like that in? Then how can you make something happen if you don't have the space for it even?
Well, to me, it's like, yeah, it'd be great if if the church was built originally with something that made sense. That's one thing, but trying to like shoehorn that into a church design that wasn't designed for it, I mean, it really does affect the beauty of the church. There's just no way around it.
mhm,
I'm sure he's looking at the legal aspect of it.
Okay. Yeah.
Absolutely.
ADA.
Yeah.
Well, there's also precedents, based on his direction, like the church design at Custer, that, St. John the Baptist is going in, Hill City's going in, Newman Center, Rapid City's in. So it's good or bad.
Yeah.
The precedent is set.
The ramps are going in?
The ramps are going.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
The ramps are-
So is Kevin aware of this? So like, is that something we tell him to kind of, is this
We
possible?
should
Is
have it
it
in the
not?
back of our minds.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that we could then show the different, I mean, here's what we could or could
Yeah.
not do even.
Yeah, so I would show him a plan without ramps. And then, and I would
Pray that
I
it
would-
flies.
fight him like a wildcat until he says, Father Kevin, go back to your parents.
Out of
and do what I
obedience.
tell you."
Yeah,
And then we'd have our backup plan.
yeah.
So,
Then we wouldn't have to at least start all over again. maybe.
okay, I need to leave here in a sec.
Yeah.
Yep.
Real quick question. So if the meeting with him is September 14th, 15th, and your hope is to present something to the parish on November 9th, that's less than a 2-month window. Is that feasible, do you think, or?
Yeah, I'm not thinking, I'm not thinking we're gonna be rolling out a design,
Oh, okay.
but I am.
Just
wanting
the
to roll
idea of the
out-
design.
Yeah, so we have a group of people
goals.
that finished that did a curriculum of art and architecture. We had a series of meetings. Here are the elements that we talked about.
Yeah.
And we're in a conversation with a church designer.
All right, perfect. Do you want to go ahead and close with prayer now? So, okay.
In the name of the Father and the Son and the Holy Spirit, amen. Glory be to the Father and to the Son and to the Holy Spirit, as it was in the beginning, is now, and ever shall be, world without end. Amen. May Almighty God bless you in the name of the Father and of the Son and of the Holy Spirit. Amen. If you guys want to go upstairs and walk around this so you can kind of see with your own eyes.
Could one of you do me a favor and